The Temple of Balmor, also more commonly known as the Temple, there was no need to specify exactly who was being deified in the name since it was obviously going to be the goddess Celestine. To make a distinction between the minute differences in the religions found across the other countries, the worshippers would either call themselves traditional, orthodox, or fundamental, though they all worshipped the goddess just the same. The highest-ranking member of the temple in the kingdom was the Archbishop Saulnier, with a variety of bishops, head priests, and monks working under him. Various clergymen and women who were a lower rank than head priest worked at the local temples scattered throughout the land, with anyone ranked higher than a minister usually going to work at the temple in the royal capital. Gender didn't matter in any of these ranks, but only women were allowed to fulfill the role of divine oracles. Since the temple worshipped a goddess, it didn't mean these oracles became brides of God or anything like that. Celestine took the form of a young maiden, and would sometimes speak with other young girls, which was why it was crucial for shrine maidens to be divine mediums themselves so they had something in common with the goddess. Anyone who married or turned 20 had to step down from their role as a medium, and anyone who made it past that point could either become a nun or priestess, or would return to secular life. However, any divine oracle who made contact with Celestine would keep their title for the rest of their life, no matter how old they became or if they were to marry. Only the cardinal and the pope held higher positions than the archbishop, who could only reside in the Holy Land of Rueda. Balmor was on constant alert that Rueda would attempt to issue an order in the name of the pope should something happen, and did its best to weaken the relationship between the Holy Land and the Balmor Temple. Those efforts were futile for the most part, which was why the country took every effort to make the temple rank lower than the king to keep their influence away from politics. Once every few years to a few decades, the goddess Celestine would take the form of a young girl to hand down divine revelations for the people to avoid disaster and other dangers. It had been over 50 years since the last revelation had come, however, and there was no longer anyone in the temple who'd been present the last time the goddess had descended. The faith of those still present had waned, and the temple became nothing more than a way for them to line their own pockets. The tendrils of depravity spread like a disease throughout the religion as a result. The Pope of Rueda had made public other divine revelations that the Grand Temple had curated, yet they weren't faced with divine punishment. Those who were part of the temple took that to mean they wouldn't face the goddess's wrath so long as it meant propagating her name. At present, the masses had deeper faith than actual clergymen. Bishop Sarrazin was one such person. He'd never seen the goddess with his own two eyes, and only saw his position in the temple as a way to support his lavish lifestyle. The image of the goddess, a cheerful, smiling girl, was another one of the reasons Sarrazin didn't see her as something to be feared, but rather as a compassionate being to them. An angel, the Bishop Sarrazin growled. A scowl grew on his face as he listened to the head priest who brought him the news the priest had heard from a lower-ranking aristocrat. Why yes, it appears several nobles claimed to have seen her perform a miracle. What foolishness! It was stated in the old records that the goddess would hand down her revelations personally. There wasn't a single mention about an angel or messenger serving as her intermediary. She would appear in every country at the same time to deliver her message directly to a divine oracle or a priest, something which hadn't happened in 53 years. There must have been some sort of fortunate coincidence or fancy trick the girl used to put the girl in the favor of all those nobles. But wait just a second. It shouldn't matter if she was a real messenger of the goddess or not. If all the fat cats believed her when she called herself that, it was only a matter of using that to the bishop's advantage. Even if she was found out to be an imposter, he would just end up being one of the victims tricked by the girl. He should get off scot-free so long as he said he couldn't doubt anyone who claimed to be the messenger of the goddess. Until then, he would use her for all she was worth to squeeze every last coin out of this fortunate coincidence. Luckily enough for him, the news hadn't spread to the archbishop or any of the other bishops. All he had to do was be the first one to contact the girl and take her under his wing. The lower-ranking aristocrat had also mentioned that the royal palace was looking into the whereabouts of the G.I.R.L. Another stroke of luck for Sarazin, since they had some very pious people inside the castle as well. "Call Minister Dorne," Sarazin ordered, wearing a vulgar sneer that no man of the cloth should ever make. It was the day after Kaoru had been turned away from the castle gates. She was outside cleaning, right in front of the front door to the workshop, when a gaudy carriage pulled up in front of her. The window opened, and a voice called out from the inside. "So, this is the Maillard workshop then? Welp, I've already got a bad feeling about this." Kaoru could feel a sudden sense of déjà vu coming on. She stopped sweeping, hanging her head in exasperation. "Yes, this is the Maillard workshop, and I'm Kaoru." It was such a pain to go through this every time, so she just skipped right to the important part. A man stepped down from the carriage as soon as he heard Kaoru's answer. He was overweight and pudgy, and was wearing a luxurious outfit, though it didn't appear to be anything an aristocrat would wear. "I am Dorne, a minister of the Grand Temple. The bishop is calling for you, so you will come with me." "Yeah, that's what I thought." Minister Dorne was an accomplice of Sarazin. And the fact that Sarazin had ordered Dorne to drag the messenger of the goddess back with him meant that they were practically on the same wavelength over what to do with her. Dorne was absolutely expecting to get a share of the profits for supporting Sarazin, of course. He also didn't believe that Kaoru was actually a messenger of the goddess, which is why he didn't hold even an ounce of respect for her. Sarazin had told him to drag her back instead of let her, or something kinder, so that should have gone without saying. "No thanks." "What?" For an instant, Dorne didn't seem to comprehend what Kaoru had just said to him. The thought of a mere commoner refuting a minister such as himself had never even crossed his mind. As he slowly came to understand the words Kaoru had said, his face began flushing red. What are you saying?" "This is an order from a bishop." "And you?" "But I'm not even a citizen of this country. I don't believe I have any obligation to listen to whatever someone from a different religious sect than my own country has to say. Normally clergymen don't go around giving people orders anyway, right?" Dorne's increasing rage over what Kaoru just said robbed him of his ability to speak. People were beginning to gather to see what all the commotion was about right as Kaoru followed up with another verbal thrashing. "Who knows what you'll try to do after dragging a girl like me into the back of your temple? I can imagine it now. And no one ever saw the girl again, or she ended up washed up on the river bank completely unrecognizable from how she looked before. I don't want to end up as a tragic news story, thank you very much." "Why, you little..." Face now completely red, Dorne finally managed to squeeze out those words. "Do you not fear divine retribution from angering the goddess?" "Divine retribution? Do you mean?" Kaoru grinned. "Something like this." Kaboom! The sound of an explosion accompanied the roof of the carriage being blown off and was caused by something that seemed awfully similar to nitroglycerin falling on top of it. Eek! Dorne collapsed to the ground. The driver who'd been sitting on the coach ran away as fast he could, while the two others who'd accompanied Dorne could only stand dumbfounded behind the minister. Bam! 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 A succession of smaller explosions erupted around Dorne as he stayed motionless on the ground. Just who do you think the goddess is actually angry with? Who do you think will be facing divine retribution here? Him. Eek! Dorne scrambled to his feet, fleeing as far as his legs would take him as his attendants frantically followed after him. And so, the rumors spread like wildfire. A minister from the temple angered the goddess by trying to kidnap her messenger and face divine punishment for insulting the girl. "Your Majesty." The temple attempted to interfere with the messenger of the goddess, and they were met with divine punishment. What was that? The guard Serge had assigned to watch over Kaoru came back with an urgent report, shocking the young king. Divine punishment? A few hundred years ago, an entire country was annihilated when Celestine was angered. This is bad. What do we do, Roland? The king usually had things under control but still couldn't get rid of his habit of turning to his brother for help when he felt like he was backed into a corner. Calm down, Serge. For now, we have to secure the messenger and put her under our protection. According to what we heard from the gatekeeper and the Viscount, she said she would never enter the castle or listen to anything the important nobles of this country had to say, right? That's why all we have to do is find a place other than the castle and a noble who isn't of import, and there shouldn't be any problems. And even if she says she won't listen to what they have to say, that doesn't mean we still can't talk things over with her. Good one, Roland. I'll send out someone to search for a noble who isn't important in the slightest. Alright. You should really watch how you put it, Serge, even if you are the king. Roland thought to himself, a wry smile tugging at his lips. So that's why you called for me. That's right. You were the only one who came to mind when we thought about aristocrats who weren't important in the slightest. Oh. Isn't it Minister Dorne? Now that is a rare sight to see. He usually doesn't show much enthusiasm for his work and was always involving himself with aristocrats and other large merchants. But here he is now, fervently offering prayers to the goddess. Archbishop Salnir nodded to himself contentedly. He'd just happened to stop by the chapel, which was where he found Dorne diligently embracing the duties of a clergyman. But taking a closer look, something seemed off about Dorne. It wasn't like he was praying out of piety, but more like he was terrified of something. The fact that his eyes were completely bloodshot as well only made it obvious something wasn't right here. Is something the matter, Minister Dorne? As soon as Dorne was aware of the Archbishop's presence, he clung to Salnir's knees. Archbishop, I've done something terrible. As he confessed to what had happened with the goddess's messenger, the Archbishop turned pale from shock. We must go to see her at once. Call Bishop Perrier as fast as you can. It was around that time Bishop Sarrazin was wondering why Dorne was taking so long to get back, but assumed it was because the girl was taking her time getting ready to come to the temple, and so didn't concern himself too much about it. I'm looking for the messenger of the goddess, a loud voice called from the entrance to the mail art workshop. Kaoru wasn't exactly a store clerk, and she'd never called herself a messenger or angel of the goddess or anything, so she ignored the voice as she continued preparing to make food for everyone in the kitchen. Achille wasn't paying attention to the voice either, since his father made sure to be clear for him to ignore any sort of contact besides the messages his father would relay to him from the castle. Berto, the head of the workshop, ended up having to greet their guest. Well, would you look at that? To what do I owe the pleasure of a temple bishop visiting our workshop, sir? Good day. Is the angel here? Angel. Berto didn't have the slightest idea what the man was talking about. I mean the angel sent by the goddess, of course. Well, God, why would anyone like that be here? The two were definitely not on the same page. Bishop Perrier, the messenger Archbishop Salnir had sent, finally recalled that he was to find someone called Kaoru, which he promptly announced to Bardo. Well, if it's Kaoru you want, she's in the back. But what's with all this angel business? Right around the time Achille was getting up to intervene before things got worse. Achille! Are you here? Viscount Lightheart had just arrived in his carriage fresh from the royal palace. Miss Kaoru will be coming to the Lightheart household to meet with His Majesty. I should think not. The messenger of the goddess will go to the temple to meet with the Archbishop. Are you saying you would keep His Majesty waiting? Who do you think is the one who always says religion and politics should have nothing to do with each other? HMGH. MMRGH. The tension in the air was palpable. Neither of them could back down now. If they did, it would compromise their chances of bringing Kaoru back with them. Geez, you guys are noisy. Kaoru finally, albeit reluctantly, showed her face. Oh, Miss Kaoru. Lady Angel. There's no problem if I just go ahead and meet them both, right? But I don't want to hear anything about doing this in either one of your home bases or in a place where there aren't any people around. I'm scared to think about what would happen, so those options are definitely out. I want to meet in a place where plenty of people who don't have anything to do with this can see and aren't under the control or influence of either of anyone involved. If you can promise to do exactly as I say on top of that, I would be fine meeting with both of them. The central plaza of Grua, the royal capital of Balmor, was in a spot near the main gate of the royal castle. The Grand Temple was facing just opposite of it, where a statue of the goddess could be seen by the entrance. Though it was usually a place full of tourists and bustling stalls as people strolled by, a hush had fallen over the plaza. It wasn't because there wasn't anyone around. In fact, there were enough people gathered here now to rival the turnouts for festivals and other grand events held only a few times throughout the year. There were even aristocrats there, accompanied by their own personal guards and attendants. As of now, though, everyone was standing completely still, and a dead silence had fallen over the plaza. In the center of everyone gathered there was a stage, one that could be easily seen by all and was only a few meters high. There were tables and chairs set up on the stage, pushed together to form the shape of a triangle. It was set up just like it was going to be a debate between three separate groups. After a short period of time had passed, about a dozen priests appeared from inside the Grand Temple. As they approached the stage, three of them broke off from the group to take their seats in the chairs provided while the others waited nearby. After another short wait, an extravagant carriage emerged from the royal palace, surrounded by an escort of guards. As it arrived in front of the stage, its passengers disembarked. Just like the priests from the temple, the three passengers took their seats on the stage while everyone else was on standby not too far away. There were three people from the temple in attendance: Archbishop Saulnir, Bishop Perrier, and Shayla, a divine oracle. Though she was an oracle, Shayla was quite old, considering she was in her upper 60s. Likewise, there were three people from the royal palace as well: the king, Serge, his brother Roland, and the prime minister, Corno. 2 points of the triangle had gathered, so all that was left was for someone to fill that last corner, and that last person was someone who would even keep the king waiting. The air was thick with tension. Sorry I'm late, guys. But that tension was all for naught as a young commoner girl called out from the crowd of people. Kaoru had requested the following in order to meet with everyone. First, she would speak with the people from the royal palace and the temple all at the same time. Second, they would do so in a place that wasn't under the control or influence of either party. And third, they would speak in front of a large group of people. Kaoru's specified venue of choice to satisfy those conditions was here in the central plaza, where they would hold a Q&A session that was open to the public. There were three people each in attendance from the royal palace and the temple, with Kaoru as the only one representing herself. Without further ado, let's get started with this hearing. At Kaoru's signal, the discussion began. First and foremost, I'd like to ask everyone why they wanted to meet with a simple commoner like myself. Why, you're the messenger of the goddess. So of course we would invite you to the royal palace. Prime Minister Corno answered, puzzled over why she would ask something where the answer seemed to be so obvious. But that doesn't really have anything to do with me, right? Even if I did go to the palace, there's nothing for us to talk about, and I don't have any business there. Prime Minister Corno was at a loss for words. Did the goddess have any revelations or blessings to give us? King Serge asked in Corno's stead. No, not really. Quote. The king stared back in blank amazement, both hands on the table. Next up was Roland, taking over for his brother to ask a question. But from what we've heard, there were some citizens here in the capital who were saved after receiving the blessings of the goddess. Oh, right. That was only to help those who had good hearts, and we're suffering for no apparent reason. Even if the royal family or any other aristocrat were doing everything they could to fairly govern over the country or their other territories. That's just part of their job, so it doesn't really make them good-hearted or anything. Any soldier or guard injured in battle only ended up like that because they were fulfilling their duty, so it doesn't really make their suffering irrational or that it happened for no reason. Neither case would call for the goddess to step in and intervene. That's why there isn't any point in me meeting with royalty or aristocrats. I can't enter the castle either, since I swore to the goddess I wouldn't after I was told I had to pay with my body if I wanted to go inside. The bomb Kaoru dropped sent shock waves rippling through the crowd. They told the angel to pay with her body. Blasphemy. What are the nobles thinking? Even Roland couldn't hide his nervousness as the people voiced their outrage. I mean, Celeste doesn't even care all that much about what happens to people unless she really takes an interest in them. Unless there was a huge amount of people who were going to be killed off, a goddess like her normally wouldn't go out of her way to intervene in anyone's lives. Roland fell into silence once he heard those words. Everyone present was also completely ignoring the fact that Kaoru was casually calling the almighty and revered goddess by a cutesy nickname. On the other hand, the participants from the temple were overjoyed to hear Kaoru say she wouldn't go to the palace. Then please come to our humble temple, the archbishop insisted. As we are so close to the goddess herself, there is no place more suitable for a messenger of the goddess to spend their sojourn here. No, I don't really have any business with the temple either. A blank look of shock covered Archbishop Saulnier's face. Even though you may be from another country with a slightly different denomination, we all worship Celestine, do we not? As a messenger of the goddess, please join us in helping the people. Perrier desperately pleaded. I'm not really a follower of Celestine or anything, you know. WHAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAA I come from a country that believes the blessings from the forest, rivers, and ocean come from the gods, and that their divine wills exist in everything. Celestine is just one of those many gods who happens to be nice enough to take on a human form to offer advice directly to the people. Then what is your relationship with the goddess? We're just friends, that's all. Saulnier and Perrier let their jaws drop in unison out of disbelief over what they just heard. Shayla, on the other hand, seemed only mildly surprised by the sudden revelation. Oh yeah, and everyone keeps calling me an angel or a messenger or whatever, but I'm not really working for Celes or anything. We're equals, and two good friends at that. At this point, everyone on the stage looked like the life had been sucked right out of them. Even if you try and force me to do something, Celes isn't going to allow anything like that to happen. Hell hath no fury like an angered goddess, and it may not stop at who started it, Karu warned, facing the aristocrats and other clergymen who weren't on the stage. It could end up including their families, their followers, the faction they belong to, the royal capital, all other territories in Balmore, or even all the temples across the entire country. Celes isn't very detail-oriented, if you catch my drift. The color instantly drained from all their faces when they heard that. If you come to me and demand that I do something for you, I can guarantee whatever you tried to ask of me is never going to happen. The gods should be respected, but you shouldn't rely on them for everything. While it's all fine and dandy to show your faith and devotion to them, you shouldn't expect them to help you, and you should never demand anything of them. Everyone on the stage except for the oracle looked like their souls had just left their bodies through their mouths. It didn't look like they had any more questions for me after that, so I was thinking it was just about time for me to hit the road when the oracle suddenly asked me something. Excuse me, but how is Lady Celestine doing? Is she testing me to see if I'm really friends with Celes? Judging by how old she looks, there's a chance she was an oracle the last time Celes handed down one of her revelations. Like she had her head in the clouds. Hee, I see. I wonder if she's talked with Celes before too? Actually, I wonder if I can just go ahead and leave now. Oh yeah, before that there's still one other thing that's bothering me. Pardon me, Miss Oracle, but can I ask you something? Of course. Please, ask anything on your mind. Why are Celes's boobs so big on that statue of her? And so, that was how the last person standing on the stage finally collapsed. Collapsed laughing, that is. Kaoru was feeling pretty good about herself. Not only had she managed to figure out a way to keep both the temple and everyone at the castle off her back, she had so much more freedom to do whatever she wanted now. Even if she slipped up a little here and there, no one should be giving her any trouble for it from now on. She would be able to help so many more people now, and just as importantly, she could get money for doing it. Just thinking about a peaceful life where she didn't have to worry about money had her grinning ear to ear. The news of what happened spread outside of Balmore in almost no time at all, and that was without Cowher knowing. These countries wouldn't just sit idly by once they found out about her. There was the kingdom of Brancott, the country Cowher had made her escape from. There was also the Holy Land of Ruetta, whose influence had weakened in the 53 years since the goddess last descended. Then there was the militaristic Aligo Empire, surrounded by nothing but ocean and mountains, who were ready to take drastic action to revitalize their steadily failing economy. The gears of discord were creaking to life throughout this once peaceful world. Even if Cowher weren't here, this was an outcome that would have come eventually. But there was one thing for certain. Cowher's existence here was only hastening the process. Bonus story. Peaceful days. I think it's about time I beefed up my cooking skills. I'd made all sorts of dishes using the ingredients I'd found here so far, but I was just about reaching my limit. I mean, the people didn't even use broth or anything like that when cooking, so everything just tasted like a big amalgamation of whatever was used to make it. It wasn't like it tasted bad or anything though. It was actually pretty good in its own way, and they could even end up with a little broth if they boiled everything just a bit. Still, it was nothing compared to the food you could get back in Japan. The real nail in the coffin was the lack of seasonings. There weren't any katsuobushi for flavor, and not a single one of those niboshi in sight. No soy sauce, no miso, not even wasabi. That's not even mentioning that spices were stupidly expensive here. True, the home-cooked meals I made back when I was working as a waitress got pretty popular after they were formally added to the menu, but I had to really think outside the box to make it work. I had to make the broth for my pho udon by taking the stock I got from drying and grilling different types of fish, or boiling different types of animal bones. But that alone wasn't enough. Any true Japanese person always had to be on the hunt for that elusive umami flavor. And so, I got right at it. I didn't have the slightest clue about where to get that fungus you needed to make miso and soy sauce, let alone how to use it, and I had no idea how in the world you would find wasabi here. But that was what I had my potional powers for. It was just like what that one guy said in that video that was popular a while ago. It's not like I've been putting this off by saying I was going to do it tomorrow or anything like that, but this is definitely the time for me to just do it. Give me a potion that tastes and smells the same as soy sauce, but make it a little bit healthier, and make it appear in a soy sauce jar. And just like that, I had my jar of soy sauce made exactly to order. I guess you could say it wasn't a jar cry from what I had back home. Ha 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 hh. Oh my goddess, that was terrible. Give me a small jar full of something that tastes and smells just like miso. And give me something that, oh, you know. Just give me wasabi. What is this? It's delicious. Munch, gobble, smack, snarf. Alright, they love it. That's some good, old-fashioned Japanese cooking for you. This should make cooking up any seafood dish a snap. That said, even though we were on a peninsula, we were still far enough away from the ocean that the day I could introduce everyone to sashimi still seemed a long ways away. The 5 guys working at the mail art workshop had always given rave reviews to my cooking so far, but today's menu was on a whole different level. I'd used soy sauce as a base for the sauce that I used to cook the meat, combining that with something that was somewhat like horseradish. I'd also used a combination of soy sauce and miso to boil and grill up a few other dishes as well. I was finally able to recreate that flavor I'd been searching for all this time. It almost brought a tear to my eye. I also managed to make miso soup and some baked miso tofu for dessert. I even made some soy sauce-flavored rice crackers for snacks when everyone was on break in between work. I was so happy that I didn't even think about putting together any specific menu and just made a whole assortment of food. These weren't exactly the healthiest dishes I'd put together, and I was pretty sure I went over the budget for only making food for one meal. Oops. Everything's been so delicious up till now, but this is the first time I've tasted anything like this. What happened for you to put on a spread like this? Ashley seemed so excited that I answered him honestly. Nothing really. I just ended up making some new seasoning to try in my cooking. We used this all the time in my country, and I was finally able to recreate that flavor just now. Wow, that's amazing. You should open up a restaurant if you can make stuff that tastes this good. Yank. Berto, Carlos, Albin, and Brian all grabbed a different part of Ashley before dragging him away to the room next door. A few minutes passed before the five of them showed up again, acting like nothing had happened. Ashley seemed a bit nervous as he turned toward me. I mean, it'd be impossible for you to get this into a restaurant. Why, you wouldn't get a single customer. Yeah? Yank. Once again, Ashley was dragged off into the other room. A few more minutes passed, and the five of them were back, acting like nothing had happened. Again. Well, I mean, yeah, it's good, but it's not something you should have in a restaurant. Sure, it'll probably get popular and stuff, but it's not something you should feed to customers. And Ashley was so confused by this point that even he didn't seem to know what he was talking about anymore. I could pretty much guess what sort of lecture the four of them had been giving him after they dragged him away to the other room. At first, it was probably something like, "What are we gonna do if Kaoru decides to quit her job here to open her own restaurant?" which was why he panicked and tried to say that my cooking wasn't up to snuff. As a result, lecture number 2 was probably more along the lines of, what if Kaoru loses her confidence and starts adding a whole bunch of weird seasonings instead, hence Ashley's confusion over what he should say now. His eyes kept flitting back and forth to me, looking pretty shook up over what to do. I guess I can't say that for sure though. The next day, I tried making some of my new and improved cooking for the members of the Eyes of the Goddess. We should open a restaurant. You guys too, But hold on a second. If I rented out a little shop to open a restaurant and had the kids as my workers, labor costs wouldn't even be an issue. Wait, no. That would mean they wouldn't be able to stand on their own 2 feet by themselves. Even if I taught them how to cook, what would happen when I was gone and they ran out of seasoning? I knew exactly what would happen to the children if the flavor of their food suddenly got a whole lot worse and they wouldn't have anyone around to support them. But there was an even bigger problem before all that. I'd be swamped if I opened up the restaurant. I'd have to always be working, morning to night. I didn't come all the way to another world just to work myself to the bone. I was going to live a life of leisure at my own pace. I wouldn't have to worry about money, and I'd have plenty of free time to myself. I was going to spend my days living the easy life as I tried to find myself someone to tie the knot with. That was the life for me. Hey. Hee. Oh, here comes Kaoru's one-man show again. Shush. That just has to be her talking with the goddess in her mind. Probably. You don't even believe that yourself, Emile. That look in her eyes is so evil, it just makes her seem like a bad guy who's up to no good. Well, yeah, I guess. And so, Kaoru's peaceful days continued for just a little while longer.